Hello dear chess friends of International Chess School. In this lecture we will continue to study the method of attacking the king in the center using a game played in November 2011 between the Grandmaster Stochek Jiri from Czech Republic and the Grandmaster Stelvagen Daniel with the black pieces from Netherlands. Both players are rated above 2,600 rating points. The game was played in European Team Championship. Not always we have a pure attack against the king in the center, but if the passive side, the side which is under attack, decided to castle anyway, the activity of the enemy forces can play an important role. The game featured the King's Indian and started with the moves knight f3, knight f6, c4, g6, d4, bishop g7, knight c3, short castle, e4, d6, h3. This setup, known as the Petrosian system, wants to wait for black's play. White wants to know if black will use the pawn trust c7, c5 or e7, e5. In both cases the move h3 is unpleasant, and White's purpose is to settle the position because he has an impressive pawn center, and he tries to calm down the play, and with the move h3 it prepares g4 at some moment if the center will be closed, or it covers the g4 square if he wants to develop the bishop on e3 against knight g4. e5, d5, exactly what I was talking about. White wants to close the center to preserve his advantage in the center, because it has two occupied squares compared to only one for black, so the score in the center is 2.5 at 1.5 for black, for white, sorry. And with the move h3 on the board, white wants to restrict black's counterplay, but there's a consequence of this move, and that important consequence is that the f4 square tends to be more vulnerable, because if black manages to install a knight on f4 and then white plays g2, g3, then the whole king's side will be weak. For this reason black played immediately knight h5, which is the most precise way to meet this quiet system from white side. White played knight h2. Actually white is inviting black to play knight f4, and then he wants to chase the knight out with g3, and if the knight goes to h3, white tries to surround the knight and then to create a dangerous attack along the h file, since the rook is still on h1 and the pawn on h7 can be attacked. Now black has the lead in development. It has 3 developed pieces, while white has only the knight from c3. I cannot name the knight from h2 as an active piece. For this reason black already has to consider what it takes to keep the enemy king in the center, and it is obvious that white will stay a while with the king in the center, at least until it manages to settle the position or to obtain an attack on the king's side. The first step in such cases is to put the queen in a position with the enemy king. It is an excellent move. It indirectly defends the knight from h5, which means that black will be ready to push f7, f5 at the next move, and it is ready to offer pawn exchanges along the f file in order to open the e file. This move will play an important role in this game. White continued normally with bishop e2, attacking the knight from h5. All of this is theory, but I suggest you not to play by the heart, not to learn variations by the heart, but to play only the moves that you are comfortable with, moves that you are able to decipher, to discover the ideas behind the moves. Knight f4. Of course, bishop takes f4, e takes f4 is not an option because the dark square's bishop will become extremely active along the long diagonal, and white has to play bishop f3. This is another reason behind the move knight h2, but now the knight on h2 is extremely passive, and the rook from h1 also doesn't have good perspectives, while the rook from f8 can be activated after f7, f5, what black did. As you can see, there's already a pawn central tension between the e4 pawn and the f5 pawn, which favors black, which has the queen on e8. So black is mixing the first step, trying to maintain the enemy king as long in the center with the help of the threats like knight f4, and at the same time he's in the second phase, try to open files against the enemy king. We will see that black will try to open other diagonals as well. Now knight f1 was necessary. The knight from h2 is completely out of play, and white's first task on the to-do list was to consolidate the e4 pawn, so knight f1, knight g3, or knight f1, bishop e3, and then knight d2 would have been a good idea. For example, knight f1, knight a6, knight g3, knight c5. Black's play is simple and effective. All black has to do in the King's Indian is to avoid settled positions. He must go for the kill. He must activate his pieces and at the same time to maintain tension and to avoid settled positions where he misses counterplay. Short castle, queen f7, b4, and knight cd3. This was the idea behind this maneuver. Knight a6, knight c5, knight cd3. It uses the consequence of the early white's commitment with bishop f3. I repeat, we are still on theoretical paths. White played g3, luring the black knight on h3. Knight takes h3. Black preserves his leading development, and we cannot say that the knight from h3, which seems to be vulnerable, is weaker than his fellow from h2. There's a balance there, and black's idea is how to open the e file. For this reason, the pawn from e5 must disappear. You have to imagine where the pawn from e5 can go. He cannot advance, but these are the two possibilities of the pawn to move, and maybe the typical idea of knight f4 was already on black's mind. White played bishop g2, attacking the knight. F takes e4. It defends the knight, and At the same time, it is a tempo move which delays white's castle one more move. Knight takes e4. There's already a pressure there along the e file. Bishop f5. Black is continuing to develop his pieces. He has 5 activated pieces, these 5, while white has only 2 pieces which participate in the battle. White played a dubious move here. Knight g4 was necessary, but even after this move, like knight g4, black can use a tempo move. h5. Of course, knight from h3 is untouchable with the rook, because bishop g4 will follow. Bishop takes g4, and of course bishop takes h3 fails to bishop takes e4. So knight e f6 check, bishop takes, knight h6, king g7, knight takes f5, g takes f5, bishop takes h3. Again, white managed to change the pawn structure on the king side, but he's a pawn down, and black will have a small edge here after queen g6, bishop f1, rook h8, defending the pawn. Now, of course, bishop e2 will be met by h4, and after queen b3, b6, bishop d2, knight d7, black completes his development. And in the case of the long castle, the domination over the h7 b1 diagonal will create serious problems for white's king. Another possibility in this position would be bishop e3, trying to cover the e file, but again the typical idea knight f4 will arise on the board. The point is that the knight from e4 will be hanging after e takes f4. Bishop f3. The bishop was attacked. It is not just a good looking move. The knight from f4 also attacks on g2. a5, queen d2, knight a6, short castle. b5. Now, in case of the castle king, we have castles on different wings. The first side which manages to open a file against the enemy king will prevail. And after c5, knight b4, again both knights are controlling the d3 square using the awkward position of bishop f3, which all the way is exposed along the f5. Sensing this danger along the f-file, white played rook f1. But if we do the pieces comparison, we will see that the rook from f8 plays an active role, while the rook from f1 simply defends a pawn. It is not a good idea to put the rook behind of a pawn and tie it up in defense. This means that the rook loses his flexibility along the first rank. All it has to do is to defend the pawn. Knight a6. This knight has a bright future in front of him. It threatens to play knight c5 at some point, knight b4. This means that white will have to think twice if he wants to defend the knight from e4 with queen c2. And by playing queen e2, also it may be dangerous, because black can simply play something like rook d7, queen d7, and bring the other rook on e8. this is what happened in the game. White played queen e2, and this amazing move, queen d7. It's a multi-purpose move. Knight b4 was also fine, but this move is more profound. Queen d7. It releases the e8 square for the rook. Prepares knight f4. The queen already finished her job along the e file, and all black has to do is to open the e file, and then all his pieces will be inside the operation, the theater of operations. Bishop e3 and knight f4. Again, knight b4 was definitely a good alternative. White accept the sacrifice. G takes f4, e takes f4. Only now white managed to clear the path for the long castle, and now black continues to create threats to enhance his piece's activity and to put pressure in the center. During this time, the knight from h2 remained completely out of play. Besides that, there's no way to activate that out of play knight, and the knight, imagine that white castle long, the knight can be subject of a double attack. With a queen on e5, black can threaten mate and the knight from h2, for example. If bishop takes f4 now, then simply bishop takes. Queen takes e4 doesn't work because of rook e8, and after bishop takes e4, rook takes f4, black has an extra pawn. After a long castle, knight c5, f3, rook e8, queen c2, knight takes e4, f takes, rook f takes e4. Black has two extra pawns and a very powerful bishop on g7, which supports black's attack on the queen side. This attack is helped by the fact that white has a lot of weak squares around the white king. There are a lot of focal squares where black can threat mate, and especially b2 is a vulnerable focal square. So white played bishop d2, trying to avoid to increase the activity of other black pieces, and it prepares the long castle at the next move. What black has to do in such cases is to look for forcing moves, for tempo moves, in order to avoid white's plan. For this reason, we have to establish the candidate moves which are with tempo. For example, a rook e8 is not a great idea because the knight from e4 is enough protected. It's protected twice. Another good idea could be knight c5 to bring the knight closer at the proximity of the white king. But there's only one move with tempo, and we have to consider that move. It is f4, f3. At first sight it looks like you give a pawn, but in fact it restricts white's intention to play something like knight f3, knight g5, or knight f3, knight d2 to support the knight from e4. It completely breaks with f4, f3, black is breaking the coordination on the most defended square. The square f3 is defended 3 times, but there's no good recapture. If white recaptures with the knight, then simply bishop takes e4, followed by rook e8. If white recaptures with the queen, it's the same story. So white was forced to take with the bishop. Now the bishop will be exposed at his turn, and it occupied the square for the pawn, which means that after rook a8, all black's pieces are active. The pair of bishops, the pair of rooks, the queen is active, it threatens queen a4 in case of the long castle, and the knight is there to play knight b4 or knight c5. During this time, white has also difficulties to defend the knight from e4. It castled long. Now it will no longer be an attack against the king in the center, but black's pieces activity is so great, and the fact that the h7 b1 diagonal is open play an important role. Black can coordinate the knight from a6, the bishop from f5, and the queen from a4 to create a really dangerous attack on light squares. These light squares around the white king are extremely weak, and c2 especially. b2, the near point on b2 is also a focal weak square. Black played queen a4. Of course, after king b1, knight c5, pinning the knight and gaining at least the queen for a minor piece and the rook after knight c5. White played knight g4. He's already lost here. Bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, queen a2, threatening mate. Bishop c3 doesn't work because the queen from e2 is undefended, and there's no other way to defend b2. If the bishop moves along this diagonal, for example, simply rook takes e4 and queen takes b2 at the next move. A magic coordination between black's pieces happened in this game. Rook d1, queen takes b2, king d1, and knight c5. The final blow. White resigned because the bishop from e4 is hanging after f3, for example. Rook takes e4 can follow, or knight takes e4. Rook takes e4, and if f takes e4, queen b3, king c1, bishop b2, king b1, and mate. There are 3 pieces in attack and no defenders. Another possibility for white would be to play bishop c1, but after queen d4, the bishop from e4 is attacked 3 times. Queen d2, rook takes e4, and exchanging the queens with the queen d4, rook takes e4 will involve the loss of the knight from g4 also. So, first of all, when you give such an attack, you have to carry out an attack successfully. it is important to imagine mating patterns. For this reason, you have to open files and to maintain the enemy king in the center, to improve the activity of your pieces. And finally, you have to calculate tactics. At some point, you cannot increase the activity of your pieces anymore, so you have to deal with the hidden ideas, like it was knight f4 in this battle. Concentrate on mating focal points, the points around the enemy king from where you can deliver the mate. In this case, white managed to castle long in the end, but the pair of bishops and the pair of rooks were extremely active. Black's pieces were amazingly coordinated, and I believe it was a good example of how the grandmasters are maintaining the enemy king in the center in the modern games. Till our next lecture, best.